Hello, I am Vishali Sharma, a psychology educator, and today we are going to discuss compliance, conformity, and obedience, the last part of our last chapter. So, this will be the last video for our board exam preparation. With that, these are certain things about myself. If you want to join my live classes, you may contact on the number given below. Without any further delay, let's begin. Compliance, conformity, and obedience. These all are the types of social influences. Social influences is basically how our society and people around us influence our decision making and our behavior. So first of all, we'll discuss conformity. What is conformity? Conformity is actually conforming to the norms of the society and actually behaving in the way the group is behaving. So Kalman talked about the compliance, identification, and internalization. So compliance is basically following the doing a behavior that other person is requesting us to do. So for example, somebody is asking, will you please pass me the pen? Okay, here no norms has to be followed. You just took the pen from your desk and you just gave it to them. Why? Because that was actually requested. Then we have identification. So this is agreement or identity seeking. You want to be identified in the group. Then you have internalization. This is information seeking. So we have people in the group who are more knowledgeable from us. For example, our teachers, our professors, our seniors, and our super smart colleagues. So all of these people are helpful to give us the information. Then we come to obedience. So obedience, we all obey to our parents, to our teachers, to professors. So it is basically following the demands from the authority, commands, orders, and instruction. For example, conformity, you may conform because you don't want to deviate the norm. Compliance, because you want to say okay, thank you, if the person is requesting you, so you will do it just because of the request. Then obedience, you're ordered. So obedience is basically a most direct form of influence, because this is something that you have to do, no matter you want it or you do not want it, but you have to do because it has been ordered by your parents and teachers. Then you have compliance. So compliance is basically when you're requested. So it is less direct, because sometimes you feel that if somebody is requesting me to just pass them a water bottle, why can I not do it? So I will do it, because it's not like very something very obediently I have to follow, but it is something that I'll do out of a good gesture. Then conformity, it is least direct, because it can be basically what do we call it, something that you just don't want to follow, because you think that if norms are there for everybody, why aren't they written? I don't care about the norms, I just want to do whatever I want to do. So that is how conformity is most indirect. First of all, we'll talk about conformity and why do people actually conform. Have you ever seen sometimes people just raise hands in saying yeah, they want the similar thing as the group wants, just because they do not want to deviate from the norm. So first of all, we have smooth functioning of the group. If everybody wants it, let it be. I will also say yes, or I will also upvote for the decision, so that the smooth functioning of the group just keeps on going on. Then fear of what people will say. If I say no, then what will he think, what will she think? All of this we think about. Then we have majority is right. So we think that everybody is thinking in that manner, it must be right. I might not be like correct on this part, because I might be thinking in another way, because majority is thinking in this manner, that means they are right and I am not. Then we have determinants of conformity. So why do you think sometimes people conform? They conform because it's not confirm, but it is conform, FORM. Okay, so here people conform by looking at the size of the group. So there are majority, like there is like 8 or 10 number of people that you are like in a group with, and now you have to say, like give a decision out, like yes or no or something. So if you're like 2 or 3, you can still manage to say no if you don't like to go for a trip, maybe for a trek or something, but it's a group of 8 and 10 and everybody is agreed. So now you're just thinking, yaar itna bada logo ka group hai, how are they going to treat me after I say no and all of that. Then size of the minority, the conformity, if the deviating minority increases, for example, out of 8, 7 people denies, then you will be like, okay, now I am also not going to go, because minority का जो size है now it is increased. Then you have the nature of the task. So verified task, like you know that you have to just say yes or no, then you will be like, अच्छा ठीक है बोल के नक्की करो यार, let's do it. Then you have non-verified tasks, like you have to give your opinion in it. So when you have to give your opinion, don't you think that something, your biases and something's gonna come up when you're speaking about certain things? Like if you ask me, do you think domestic violence is good? I will say no. Okay, but there's a group of people who believe that it's good, and I'm a part of that group, and it's like major seniors and everybody. And if I said yes, just because yes and no was asked, it might be like I have confirmed to the group. But do you think if I am like allowed to give my opinion while speaking about domestic violence, my actual opinion and attitude will come up in my speech, because I will be saying that this is something that I feel absurd and not supporting it, because this is in you, so you cannot just make up your whole opinion for other people. Then you have public and private expression of the behavior. So when you have to really say yes in front of everybody, you do conform. But when you have to give that ballot system thingy, then you have to just write down your answer and put it in the box. There, if your name is like anonymous, your identity is anonymous, nobody is looking at who said yes and who said no, you will give the right answer and you will not conform. Then you have personality. So highly intelligent and confident people don't conform. They don't conform because they think that it is not right and I don't believe in it, so I will not conform. Whereas the conformity, like personality, are people who are very like changes with situation. They think that what other people will think matters me the most. Then you have informational influence. So sometimes we actually accept and goes with the people who we think are more knowledgeable about that part. For example, when we were kid, whenever our parents used to say that eating ice cream will give you cavity, we used to believe in it, and we stopped taking multiple ice creams in a day, and we took like once a week we went for an ice cream treat or something, because that was some information that has come up, because that was related to my health, and that is why I have changed. Okay, so now new group members act in accordance to the older group member because they think that the information that they're giving is actually right. Then you have normative influence. So normative influence is not informational, because you're not following the information, but rather you're going for the norms. Like how everybody is behaving, you're behaving in that similar manner. How everybody thinks that the cases, like if they'll like say no and they'll get punishment, so that is why they're just doing normative influence. Then we come to compliance. So what is compliance? I've already told you, compliance is basically doing a behavior because somebody is requesting you. So there are multiple techniques, and they're fun techniques. Believe me, they're just fun techniques of compliance. First of all, we have foot in the door technique. So foot in the door technique starts from a smaller request, and now you increase your request ka tendency because your initial request has been accepted. For example, there's my neighbor and she asks me, will you please keep my kid for an hour? I just need to go to a police station for some custodial work and then I'll be back. Okay, I said yes. Then next day she says that will you please keep my kid for the whole day? I need to go for some work meeting. If I have said yes for the first one, now I'm more likely to say yes again, because it's just a time like for the whole day, but it's like something that I've already done it in the past, so I'll be like okay. But then she'll increase the request that will you please keep my kid for a week because I want to go on a vacation with my husband. So that is how asking, giving like very small requests first, and then the large request that you wanted to make, that you have actually seen that yes, I said yes for the smaller one, I will say yes for the big one also. Now we come to deadline technique. Have you ever seen mega buster sale, Diwali sale, Holi sale, Independence Day sale? It's just the offer for 24 hours and you go on purchase things which you don't even want, just because the deadline has come up, because the scarcity has come up, because you think it's the last day and cannot miss this opportunity. You end up buying things that you don't even want. Then you come to door in the face technique. It's basically opposite of foot in the door technique. Here you make a large request, like will you keep my kid for a whole week, and I say no. Then you come to the actual request, which was like, will you keep the kid for an hour because I want to go buy some groceries from the market. So here basically you came from a larger request to smaller request, which you actually wanted to get like said yes. So first your larger request will be refused, and now you might be feeling like up to ye matlab they have said no, and now you will be like guilty that I have said no for such a request. So now you'll be like, just small favor, will you please do? Then you will be like compelled to do it, because you're like, oh no, I have said no for the first request which was quite large, but this is something small that they want me to do, let me do it. Then we come to obedience. So obedience is basically following the instructions, orders, rules, and not rules, orders and instructions and commands from the authority figure. Here, if we don't obey, we get punishment, and authority must be obeyed. That is what we have learned since childhood, and authority is like an effective means of enforcing orders also. Then now, why do people obey even if they know that their behavior is harming others? So there was a study, I know there is no mention of the study here, but sometimes you will in like future, if you go for psychology, you will know about the study done by Milgram and Zimbardo. So Zimbardo did a prison experiment and Milgram did a lab experiment where he actually recruited his own students. He was a teacher, he was a professor. So he recruited and he basically made a setup where there was a learner who was also a pseudo participant, like not the real participant. The real participant was a teacher. They were said that the teacher and learner, it's an experiment where the teacher will be punishing the learner whenever they're going to do the mistake, and the teacher will actually have to administer electric shocks, and they were said that this is what they are going to give it to the learner whenever they're going to make mistakes. And there was an authority figure who was himself, like Milgram himself, who used to give commands to the teachers to just go ahead and keep doing it. So when people actually engage in a behavior and they are just keep on doing things just because they are coming from somebody higher than them or authority figure, they feel de-individuation. They feel that they are not the charge of their behavior, but it is somebody else. It is not them who will be charged for punishing or who will be like punished for whatever they're doing, because it is something they are just merely following the commands. They're not even thinking. They're basically administering shocks, electric shock, 420-volt shock to other individual. Believe me, there were no real shocks given, but it was told to the teacher that they are administering the real shock, and the learner used to make noises and voices as if they are really getting those shocks. And there were participants who were like after that debriefed, like told that they were not given like real shocks and everything because they felt really bad. Sometimes some people really felt bad. So people, first of all, as I've already said, whenever they're obeying somebody, they feel not responsible for their actions. Then authority is generally someone who has some status in front of them. Like Milgram was a professor. If you don't obey your professor, you might like get debarred from the college, or you don't get good grades and all of that. Then there is authority increases the command from lesser to greater. So you have like initially they were allowed to give only the minimal amount of shock, but that ranged to 420-volt, but they like from minimal they were going to higher, and the events were at very fast speed. It was not like very 2-minute rest or something has been given to the another individual so that they can really make out what they're actually doing. The events actually happened in a very fast, like riots and all. If you have seen like police go on a first on the water charge, then on a lathi charge, then actually shooting and all. So things actually happen in a very fast speed that they don't have time to think what they're doing. Then we have cooperation and competition. So cooperation is when you have a shared goal and the group wants a reward, whereas a competition is just maximizing your own benefit because you are the one, okay, who will be winning and getting all the rewards. So cooperative goals, individual actually attain the goal only if the members of the group also attain it. For example, relay race. Have you ever seen a race where one person after 100-meter gives the rod to another individual, then to another, then to another, like 4-5 individual, and ultimately if the speed of every single one of them was good, then only the team won. So that is a cooperative goal that can be won only if everybody from the group is working. Then you have competitive goal. Here basically 100-meter race which you have to win just to get the reward, and it is to actually have like maximization of your own profit. Then competition between individual result in obviously conflict and disharmony. Have you ever seen like little kids, if they have to compete over a chocolate or something, they are going to have such great conflict and mental tension against each other that you can't even imagine. It's not just little kids these days, adults are also behaving in this manner. Then you have competition between groups may lead to, this is cooperation, please change it. The second point is cooperation between the group may lead to increase within the group cohesion and solidarity, because now you have to work together to get the reward or to get the to win. Okay, then you have determinants of cooperation and competition. So first of all, in a reward structure, you have a cooperative reward where the reward is possible only if everybody contributes. So here you will actually work toward it. Here in competitive reward, it is only possible if others don't get it. So here you are going to go ahead and work for it so hard and harder that you get it and not anybody else. Then you have interpersonal communication. So if you have good interpersonal communication, you're going to cooperate. That please do exercise, have your eggs and bananas and breakfast and everything, proper meal, be healthy, and let's all just win together the relay race tomorrow that we have. Then we have reciprocity. So have you ever seen people who are like, अरे उसने भी मेरी मदद की थी ना, इसलिए मुझे भी उसकी मदद करना जरूरी है, because it just happened like that. So reciprocity is when you are obliged to follow something, you have to give the return of whatever you are doing, and you have to cooperate just so that you have things like clear in your head that I have also done a favor if they have done a favor to me already in the past. And competition may actually increase the conflict. Then you have intergroup conflict. I have already told you about us and they feeling. So whenever we have we and they feeling, and if it gets intense and we are only looking forward for our own interest and not of other people's interest, we are actually exerting power, being aggressive. That ultimately leads to rise in conflicts. Okay, being an Indian, you have already experienced many of the riots and conflicts in like history and even now. So not just Indian, but the world is fighting. So all of this just happened because of the intergroup conflicts. Okay, then conflict is basically the process in which either of the individual or a group receives that other or opposing interest, or both try to contradict each other. You think that whatever you think is correct and the other person is just a fool, or the other party thinks that they think is whatever they think is correct and the other one, like us, are fools. Major reasons of group conflict. First of all, lack of communication. Why do we sit for like what do we call it, the like conference, or why don't we just sit for cooperative talk or something where you can just sit down and you just be like you call somebody senior, or have a group talk where you just talk about the conflict, you just speak where you're feeling bad, you just make them understand that these are certain things we also want and these are certain things we want you to actually work upon, and that is how you resolve the conflict. But majorly you will see that people who have a group conflict, they don't communicate much. So there are middle people who actually increase the intensity of the internal revenge taking feeling in them, and that ultimately leads to fight. Then you have biased perception, the perception of us and them, the perception of we are good and they are bad. All of this leads to group conflict. Then we have the desire to retaliate. We want to, for example, if somebody harmed us from the other community, we want to retaliate, badla lene ki bhavna. So that is how group conflict occurs. Then we have feeling of deprivation. We think if we don't kill them, everything, all of our resources will be taken away by us. So Hitler, what did he do? He actually killed every Jew because he thought that Jews are taking up all their jobs and everything, and he actually killed each one of them, thinking that if they will be alive, we will be deprived. Then we have competition over scarce resources. You might have seen people where is like little amount of water in the village, so people might go early, like get up early in the morning, stand in the lines to get their pots filled. But if there's somebody entering into the middle, like in the line, like in the like breaking the line and all, they actually end up fighting and hitting other individuals, saying that it's a scarce resource. We woke up at 4 and you just came at 7. How can you enter the line? How can you take the water before us? And all of that happens. Then feeling that other group violates their norm. So we have our own personal norms, we have our personal rules, we have our own personal culture. And when we think that our culture is basically violated by other people, so that is how people actually escalate into the Group conflict. Then we come to perceived inequity. So what is it? It is basically when you actually compare your personal effort to your reward, then to your friend's effort and their reward. So if you think that you are also a graduate, postgraduate, GATE qualified, NET qualified, JRF holder, and the other individual has similar like similar qualifications, and you are getting salary of like 1 lakh and the other person is getting 1,20,000, so where are you going wrong? Is it the company who's not correct for you, or is it your friend who is putting more flattery and putting more butter on the boss, that that is why he or she is getting promotions? So that also can contribute to you feel more irritated and exploited and not so charged to actually work forward. Then you have conflict that can be explained at 3 levels. So first of all, structural level. How we have actually a society which is stratified. Okay, we are having poverty, economic conditions and inequalities. So we have rich who are becoming richer and we have poor who are becoming poorer. So that is how conflicts may arise, because you have a structure in inequality. Then you have groups. So social level, unequal power. Whenever you will see people who are really deprived, they're actually getting more and more deprived because of their social status being not so powerful, even if they actually gain a lot of knowledge. Then the individual level, where you think your beliefs, your biased attitude and your personality characteristics. For example, you might think that girls are not abused, girls are not discriminated against, but will you please ask the same question to me, my dear friend? It is something that is still prevalent today. The discrimination does happen at the individual level to each one of us, but it doesn't come into light because nobody is taking interviews and putting it in their journals every day. Okay, now we come to consequences of intergroup conflict given by Deutsch. First of all, lack of communication and trust between the groups. So now you have had a conflict with another individual. Now you will end up being very rude to them. You will not talk to them. You will have trust issues. If something is coming from them, you will be like, no, it might be wrong because it is coming from the other side. Then you have group magnify their differences. Now you already had a good conflict. Now you have like major magnification of whatever you had earlier. You might be thinking that the other group used to violate your norms. Now you think that other group have harmed my people, they have killed my people, now I don't like them, I want to kill their whole community, and all of that happens. Then you have each side tries to increase their power, which result into more conflict. Now if you have seen that after Indo-Pak war, we both the countries started doing nuclear weapon increase in the production of all of this, so that if the other country attacks on us, we are also ready to attack. So all of this actually give the what do we call it, sneak peek and major tension between the two groups, because the groups are like, if they are working on this nuclear explosion, we should also think about the same. We should also go on keep an eye open to the other country, thinking that no, they might harm us or something like that. Then intergroup conflict hardens, threatens and directed towards the outgroup. So now you are actually more hardened feelings and more threatening, like you will be like, I will kill you if you come in front of me now. Then you have conflict resolution strategies. So these strategies actually work with kids. I have seen Robert Sheriff's experiment where he actually introduced the superordinate goals. So superordinate goals are goals that can be attained only when both the parties work together. So they can increase the communication, they can increase the trust levels, and that is how they can resolve the conflict between the two. Then we have altering perceptions. So when we used to think that they are just bad, they're just sad, they're just not good and all of that, we used to think. So now you just alter the perception, make them think that please start from the beginning. Do you really think each and every one of the other country or the other religion or the other group is bad or sad or not good for you? Or is it something that has been magnified by your own community and by your own country or by your own people, saying that everybody of them is same? So just think, alter your perception. Then increase intergroup contact. You like have some parties or some conferences or some gala time between the two conflicting groups, so that they sit together, talk together, even if they want to fight, like verbal fight, by talking about the like differences between the two. Let that happen so that everything just come out and they can be calm. Then we have redrawing the group boundaries. So the boundaries can be like, when these boundaries were like this triangle was separated from this triangle, you can actually have both of them open, and you can ask them, let's draw a boundary again where both can be in the same setup. Then we have negotiation. So we have certain things like you talk. Okay, so in negotiation you can have reciprocal communication. You can be like, okay, I am coming 20 meter, you please also try to come 25, and even if they say no to 25, please come 20 meter, and then we will come 5 meter, and then we will come 5 meter. So I'm using this analogy of mathematics in actually having communication between the two parties. Then we have structural solution. So structural solution can be actual equality. So if there is a structural difference, if there's like rich getting so richer and poor getting more poorer, and not knowledge and all of that, so now equality can come into place, equal to everybody. Need, if somebody really needs it, I have already told you equity is important. If somebody doesn't need it, why do you want to give it? Okay, so give it to those who really want it. Then we have equity, again need basis pay, and then equity. Need basis pay, if you see that somebody is deprived of the basic needs like food, shelter, house, just provide this to them, not to people who are actually rich. Then come to the respect for the other social group norms. So you cannot be just like I am not going to talk to them because I feel that they're not good people or something like that. You just can be a little calm and like more cooperative to other group, because thinking that these norms are created by them for their own people, I should respect them irrespective of something that is not my own. But I can just respect them. Respecting is not something charging you very much. You can just be polite, you can just be calm, you can just be happy. And believe me, actually when you receive a gift, you're happy this much, but when you give something to other people, you're happy this much. Try this out. With that, we are done with our whole 12th board syllabus. I hope all of you scored the best, like 90s and 100s in your board exam, and all of you succeed in your grades and in your colleges and your professions. With that, tata, bye bye, good day.